On April 6th, 2026, 4 human beings traveled farther from Earth than any person in history. Not in a simulation, not in a film, in a capsule the size of a large SUV, moving at thousands of miles per hour, 252,760 miles from the planet where every human being who has ever lived was born, grew up, loved someone, and died. And in that moment, farther from home than anyone had ever been, they took photographs. Not of the moon, not of deep space. They pointed the camera back at Earth, a pale crescent, small enough to fit behind a thumbnail. We do not go to leave, we go to understand what we are leaving behind. In September of 1962, President John F. Kennedy stood at Rice University in Houston and said something that had never quite been said before. In front of 40,000 people in the middle of a Cold War, with the Soviet Union ahead of the United States in virtually every measurable category of the space race. He said, "We choose to go to the moon. Not because it is easy, but because it is hard." The Cold War context is real and it matters. It shaped the funding, the urgency, the timeline. But beneath the geopolitics, Kennedy understood something deeper. He said the goal would serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Not dominate, not win. Organize and measure, as if the moon were not a destination, but a mirror. Apollo 11 landed 7 years later. We went back 5 more times. And in December of 1972, Gene Cernan climbed the ladder of the lunar module for the last time, looked back at the surface, and became the last human being to stand on another world. That was 53 years ago. The question worth asking is not why we went, it's why we stopped, and why, after half a century, we are going back. When Apollo ended, it wasn't because we ran out of rockets or engineers or ambition. It was because we ran out of reasons that the people writing the checks could defend to the people paying them. The flag had been planted. The Cold War objective had been achieved. In the brutal arithmetic of political will, the mission was complete. What we left behind was more than footprints. 12 people walked on the moon. Their boot prints are still there. The moon has no atmosphere, no wind, no weather to disturb them. The flags still stand, though ultraviolet radiation has almost certainly bleached them white by now. But beneath the lunar South Pole, locked in permanently shadowed craters that have not seen sunlight in billions of years, there is water ice. This is not a hypothesis. It is a confirmed fact. Water ice. On the moon. In sufficient quantities to potentially support a permanent human presence. That changes the calculation entirely. Artemis is not Apollo. The differences matter. Apollo was a sprint, a defined objective, a geopolitical deadline, a finish line. We reached it. We stopped. Artemis is designed as infrastructure. The goal is not to visit the moon. The goal is to stay. Water can be split into hydrogen and oxygen, rocket propellant. A lunar base with access to water ice is not just a habitat. It is a refueling station. The moon becomes a waypoint rather than a destination, a place you pass through on the way to somewhere further. That somewhere further is Mars. Every step of Artemis is designed to answer a question that goes beyond the moon entirely. Can humans leave the Earth-Moon system and survive? That question has never been answered, not once in the history of our species, and the answer, one way or another, will be among the most consequential facts in human history. There is something that happens to almost every astronaut who has ever seen the Earth from space, something no training prepares them for. Astronaut Ron Garan called it a cognitive shift in awareness. Edgar Mitchell, who walked on the moon during Apollo 14, described it as an instant global consciousness, a sudden overwhelming perception of Earth as a single interconnected system, rather than a collection of nations, borders, and competing interests. Researchers have a name for it. The overview effect. It is not a metaphor. Studies of astronaut testimony across decades show a consistent pattern of psychological transformation. A sense of fragility, of preciousness, of the profound absurdity of the conflicts that seem so urgent from the surface. You cannot argue someone into that feeling. You cannot lecture them into it or show them enough data. It requires the view. The Artemis II crew is experiencing it right now. Reed Wiseman holding his iPhone to the capsule window. Christina Koch looking back at a planet containing every ocean, every forest, every person she has ever known, reduced to something you could cover with your thumb. What they bring back is not just data. It is a kind of knowledge that cannot be transmitted in words, only pointed at. Here's the part of this conversation that rarely makes it into the political debate, the budget hearings, or the press releases. We are a single-planet species. Everything we are, every work of art, every scientific discovery, every person alive, and every person who has ever lived, exists on one rock, orbiting one star in one of 2 trillion galaxies. That is not a poetic observation. It is a statement of existential risk. The history of Earth is the history of mass extinctions. 5 of them, catastrophic enough to eliminate the majority of species alive at the time. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs 66 million years ago arrived with no warning, no negotiation, no policy response. The Earth is also warming, at a rate unprecedented in the geological record outside of mass extinction events. And the technologies of the 21st century, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, nuclear capability, carry within them the possibility of failure at scales previous generations never had to consider. This is not pessimism. This is the situation as it is. Against that situation, becoming a multiplanetary species is not ambition. It is the most rational insurance policy in the history of civilization. If we are here and somewhere else, the things that threaten here cannot take everything. In a previous episode, we explored Fermi's question, where is everyone else? One answer that keeps physicists up at night is that the step from single planet to multi-planet species is the filter, the thing most civilizations never managed to clear. We are attempting to clear it, right now, in real time. There is a photograph taken by Voyager 1 on February 14, 1990, at the suggestion of Carl Sagan. Voyager was 3.7 billion miles from Earth on its way out of the solar system. Sagan asked NASA to turn the camera around for one last look. The image shows a tiny point of light, barely a pixel, suspended in a beam of scattered sunlight. That point is Earth, every human being who has ever lived. Sagan called it the pale blue dot. He wrote, "On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives." He didn't write that to produce despair. He wrote it to produce clarity. Because once you see the pale blue dot clearly, 2 things become simultaneously obvious: how precious it is, and how necessary it is to leave, not to abandon it, never to abandon it, but to stop treating it as the only bet we have. Kennedy understood this, even if he couldn't say it in those terms in 1962. The moon was never the point. The point was, what he said at Rice in the words nobody quotes as often as the hard things line. We shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. Not conquest, not dominance, a banner of freedom and peace. The astronauts aboard Artemis II are carrying no flag of conquest. They are carrying something harder to see and more important, the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that is learning, slowly and imperfectly and at enormous cost, to reach beyond itself. They are not going because it is easy. They never are. Artemis II will splash down off the coast of San Diego in the coming days. 4 people will climb out of a capsule and breathe ocean air and feel gravity again. Farther from this planet than any human in history, carrying in their eyes the image of an Earth small enough to fit behind a thumb. And then the work continues. Artemis III will attempt to land humans on the lunar surface, the first time since Gene Cernan looked back in 1972. After that, a gateway station, a South Pole base, and somewhere beyond all of that, a trajectory toward Mars. None of this is guaranteed. The funding is uncertain, the timelines slip, the engineering problems are real. But here is what is also true. In September of 1962, going to the moon in 7 years was considered by most serious scientists to be impossible. No computers powerful enough, no suits proven in that environment, no rocket that had carried a human beyond Earth orbit. And yet, 7 years later, 2 men stood on the moon, looked up at a blue marble in the black sky, and called home. We have done the impossible before. Not once, not by accident, but repeatedly, deliberately, at moments when the alternative was too costly to accept. The moon is up there tonight. It has watched this planet for 4.5 billion years. It watched the first life form in the oceans below it. It watched the first human beings look up and wonder what it was. Now it is watching us go back. Not because it is easy, because we are the kind of thing that goes.